I'm Gail Bennington.
I'm Ron Bennington, and I had no idea today was the 1st of June. In New York City, feels like the city's been air conditioning. It's incredibly cool out there.
Yeah. It's weird. A lot of things have happened since this quarantine has begun. And it's so strange to think that this is June, which is the exact time that Tommy Johnigan said we had to wait to talk about Lena Dunham's. I hope he pushes this back a little bit.
Well, I got to tell you, there's nothing else in the news, so let's hop into it. I think that she's right. I think we should all love ourselves and see ourselves as beautiful. And I'm going to celebrate my body this summer. I really didn't watch any TV over the weekend. Anything big happening? Anything going on in America? Or just enough? There's nothing to watch on TV. It's so dull.
Yeah. I think I had the TV on and Twitter going for the past 3 days. And now I just feel so exhausted.
Set yourself up like it was a little war room.
Yep.
We always have that tendency now that I was thinking about that. Like years ago, you would have had to have been CBS News to get what you can now get out of your couch. You know, you're like, new reports are coming in. There's a dumpster fire in Chicago.
Right. And then that's the funny thing, when the 24-hour news coverage is not enough and you feel like you're getting more, videos of people on the street taking videos, and you're like, how are you guys not picking up on this yet? Like if you're reporting something before Chris Cuomo does.
If I'm going to be honest about this, there probably was better footage on Twitter and social media than there was. There was still, I feel like the news is really lagging behind with the talking heads. I like to flip around to all big three stations. And it's amazing to me how much they bring back the same people that they always have on those shows. And you're like, I see this guy once or twice a week. Why am I listening to him tonight? Give me footage, video.
Right.
I have to also just say this. So I got to see in New York City, I was heading out on Saturday, not yesterday. So Saturday, I see a protest going by on the east side. I walk across the park. I see another protest going by on the west side. And I'm like, oh, shit. People are going to be meeting up. They've, and there were, cop cars along with each protest. I think they might have gone to Times Square, then Union Square, across the bridge, back to Union Square. But I'll just say this. And this was some of the surprising thing. The Black Lives Matter protest was far from being just black people. It literally looked like that TV show High Fidelity on Hulu. It was extremely attractive young people of every race. From what I saw, it was well over 50% women than men. I've never seen that kind of thing take place before. And again, on the other side of it, these kids all seemed extremely well-intentioned and not violent and not, cruel. If anything, I would have said too attractive. But and then as the night goes on, all kinds of, stuff gets crazy. But if you turn on TV news, you see, quite frankly, elderly people talking about it. We're still going back to Reverend Al. We're still going back to the guy that used to run the black guy that used to run the Republicans, and now he's anti-Trump. You still get the same kind of elderly faces, where Vito would have been by far the oldest person in the protests that I saw walking by.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's going to keep us like disconnected from each other also for a while.
Yeah, that's a very strange thing for me to see too. Is just how young so many of these kids out there look. They look so young to me.
Now the weird thing for me, because I'm not young, but when I sat there on Saturday watching a split screen of protesters and a rocket launch, I'm like, I feel like I'm a child again. This is literally the way I grew up during, the Vietnam War, being very young, of being completely interested in the space program, and on the other hand, seeing the protesters, and still, I'm still confused about how the protesting thing operates, works out, and at the end of the day, did this thing work or not? Everything from the protest point of view, it was what I was talking about Friday, was hoping wouldn't happen, did happen, where it becomes them focusing on looting, and I'm talking about the TV broadcast, and me thinking, well, that's playing the opposite way, but then also deciding, okay, this isn't Martin Luther King, but maybe it'll end up becoming Stonewall. Maybe at the end of the
Right.
day, this is a birthing process that we're going through. You have to feel like the quarantine has a lot to do with people feeling cooped up. And also being nervous about, is this going to spike the coronavirus again?
Yeah. Well, I thought that was interesting. That was a big difference I could see in protests depending on where they were taking place. Like if you looked at in New York City, where we obviously had, the highest number of cases, that was like a sea of masked people. But then there are other places you would see, footage of people on the ground and you're like, that's like half masks. Like maybe half of those people have masks, sometimes less.
Yes, and I really also thought a lot of the towns had their own personality. I mean,
Hmm.
Louisville was certainly a much different feel.
Yeah.
Minneapolis was a different feel than New York. Miami and Atlanta all had their own feels. But out
Yep.
of everybody, I thought most aggressive, even more than Miami, L.A. There was a point in L.A. where the cops and the protesters were like junkyard dogs just barking at each other from like
Yeah.
a foot and a half away. And I'm like, this could go, this could go sideways fast.
And I saw a lot of footage of very aggressive NYPD, but then would see in different cities, a majority of the videos coming out of there, and it didn't look like their police behaved that way. So I also think there's like a personality that goes with the protesters in each city and the cops of each city.
Yeah, and some of that I think comes from the top down. Atlanta seems to be more about restraint. Minneapolis seems to be more about restraint. New York, if you really look at the cops who misbehaved and the looters that misbehaved, it really was a small percentage on each
Yeah,
side. But those things are the ones that grab your eye.
of course.
The
Yeah.
cop that pushed the small girl down and she smashed her head and he kept going. I mean, you're not going to stop looking at that. And it's the same
Right.
way when you see somebody burning a car, your eye is directed to it,
Of course.
but
Yeah.
it is a smaller percentage.
I guess too, like the difficult thing to process with all that is you're like, okay, well, there's, it's almost like saying, oh, that yeah, there's bad folks on both sides, but it's difficult because one of those sides is law enforcement. So you know what I mean? Like
Right.
that's not someone that you want some bad folks on. Where you're like, okay, some like the unruly or violent or aggressive protesters are getting arrested, but it's not like you go and those cops who were behaving that way were also arrested. You know what I mean? It's not like there are two people that should be clashing. That's the difficulty.
Well, also, from the cops' point of view, this is like really the toughest part of this. So you're going to have the youngest and physically strongest cops out there. I mean, a lot of those cops look like bouncers at a bar.
Yeah.
And that's because on the weekends, they are bouncers at a bar. It's literally the same guys that are going to be checking IDs on a Saturday night are, part of your riot patrol. And that also means that they have the least amount of experience. I remember when I had to, when I was on jury for a month in New York City, and the beat cops would come in and they would try to like read their reports to us. And I was like, and this is grand jury. And I'm like, this is some of the dumbest people I've ever heard talk. And then the detectives would come in and they would talk, and I'd be like, oh, this is one of the smartest people I've ever heard talk. Like, it's really
Right.
a real difference between the guys that come in and they're young and they're, working as beat cops. And then those detectives, which I can tell you, you never want to be in trouble with those detectives. I mean, they were brilliant. So that's, that's part of the problem. Another thing that comes up about Minneapolis, and I'm talking about the police and the people out, and the people that were protesting. I've dealt with Minneapolis before. They have a reputation of being nice people, and that reputation comes from them. But I've seen it another time when they came into Philadelphia, went to the Rocky Steps, and tried to put stuff on the Rocky statue. All right? And then what happened at the game? You want to calm down Minneapolis? You call one man, and his name is Nick Foles. And he shut up everybody from that town. Boom. And then just a few weeks later, where are we? In the Super Bowl, beating Tom
Right.
Brady. Supposedly
That
the
could be all of
GOAT.
us.
When you beat the GOAT, are you the GOAT? Discuss.
Yes. In the case of Foles, yes.
Yeah, he's the greatest of all time. But I'm telling you right now, those people from Minneapolis, how dare you come in and start to screw around with the Rocky statue? That's hallowed ground. All right, it's the Bennington show, and as Gail pointed out, we had an entire weekend of the world going sideways. And this is, of course, and I don't know if everyone is aware of this, but all over the world there were protests, which is fairly embarrassing.
Yeah.
And another thing that I had a hard time believing is that they took Trump down, I think it was Saturday night, and put him in a bunker for an hour under the White House. And at no time did I think to myself, they're going to breach the White House. But somebody must have thought that for him to go downstairs,
Right. The between knowing that he was down there in a bunker and then seeing the White House lights out, it just felt so strange. Where like I agree, I didn't think like, oh no, is he in danger? But I'm like, obviously they're trying. They think it's a possibility.
Yeah. They honestly believed there for a second that they could lose the White House. And it's like those movies. I think, Vito, what are these movies you go to, the Fallen movies?
Olympus Has Fallen.
Yes, that's where it was going. Now, you do have to, of course, be careful because, I mean, there's nuts everywhere. Gail, this picture is, if you go over to our Instagram, there is a looter destroying a car, and it's on the front page of our Instagram on the Upper East Side. And it's just, I mean, for me, this is heartbreaking because this is my neighborhood. And look at the joy this
Oh
asshole.
my God. This is unreal. I feel bad that I was defending any means necessary when I see this kind of level of disrespect for private property. It's
Yeah,
disturbing.
I guess this. Yeah, I guess this would be considered any means necessary. And again, I don't know. I like to think of myself as the person who wants to find something good. I'm just happy that this looter has found a way to keep his weight down during quarantine. It's a very difficult time, you know? But this,
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it actually took me a moment to
yeah.
notice that there was a wrecked car because I couldn't believe how fit this tiny little looter was.
Well, I wouldn't use the word fit, but certainly is not putting on the quarantine weight, I'm happy to say. All right, that's up on Instagram. And believe me, if you have any kids around, you do not want them to see this. I mean, this person has totally destroyed a gorgeous, gorgeous car. And that's what we've seen all weekend. By the way, there in my neighborhood, the Lululemon boarded itself up. And I'm like, yoga pants? You think that's what we're worried about
Yeah.
the looters getting? Because the looters didn't look like a yoga pants type crew.
No, they didn't look like that they were worried about getting $100 yoga pants. And if I found out that store would be looted, I'd be looking at you, Karen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very expensive store, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's super expensive yoga pants. I mean, it's just activewear. If you've ever tried a pair on, you're like, these are certainly the same as others. I don't know why they're so expensive.
Well, I think you want to get that logo, don't you? You know what I mean? I would love to have that logo at all times. I want people to know that I've got the pants, not just a pant, the pant.
The pants. I feel like if I were, looting, I'm just so indecisive that it would just, you know what I mean? Like the cops would already show up and I'd be sitting there like, what do I want? What do I want? I don't know.
I know. My problem would be I'd take a leather jacket and then just end up putting it back, going, I don't, you know what I mean? I don't,
Is this really me?
yeah.
Like I think it's cool, but I don't want to look like I'm trying too hard. You're asking the cop as he's coming in, arresting everyone. What do you think?
On Earl's Instagram, he put up pictures of a boarded up Macy's and a boarded up Hard Rock with no human beings in the pictures at all. Earl, exactly where were you during this looting, and did you have anything to do with it?
No, I had nothing to do with the looting, but when I got out at Penn Station, I noticed I was walking up, there was no one out, and then as I walked east, I saw the guys finishing up, boarding up Macy's, and by the time I hit 6th Avenue, there was a group of protesters heading up 6th Avenue, and that's where I was, and the cops had set up a perimeter around Macy's to make sure that they didn't get around to Macy's and let the guys finish boarding it up. The protests are scattered everywhere, and one group went up to Times Square, another one went south, another one went towards Broadway. I'd never seen anything like this. Usually protests are very coordinated. They start here, we're going to end here. This one was just it was bouncing all over the place.
Well, you got it into it later in the week, and as you saw, the cops were able to get some footing as the week went along. The first night, it was just burn, baby, burn. The second night, cops showed up but got chased out of there. By last night, in particular, they were like, it was like a military action. They knew how to play the game. They had a chance to set up the chessboard a little bit.
Yeah, Saturday, last night, they had fire trucks, corrections vehicles. They made this big giant train around Union Square to basically, if you're going to protest, you're going to protest directly in Union Square. You're not going to go to the side streets were fair game. I was with Lily and her husband. We basically saw and heard them destroy a policeman. I mean, the noise that it made and how quick. I mean, it was like a minute and a half, and it was over and done. And that thing was trashed.
All right, that whole thing about Union Square, Gail, got me nervous because that's where the stand is, right off from there. And I'm like, oh, they're pushing people down those side streets. And I hope they don't push them right into the stand. I have my own personal thing about this. All right, this is what people are writing about this. Protect the Hard Rock Cafe at all costs. It took decades for gentrification and displacement to destroy once vibrant communities. Sorry about your Hard Rock, though. Not the Hard Rock Cafe. Oh, the humanity. Anything but the Hard Rock Cafe. Oh, my God. How dare they target Tiffany and Company and the Hard Rock Cafe. They're destroying the character of this city. So it is kind of interesting when you see people on TV going, oh, they're destroying these mom and pop stores, but you do see them defending. The cops will defend the big box stores, particularly the high end ones, a little more. And Earl, that's got to hurt you since you've also worked the Hard Rock.
Yeah, I work at the Hard Rock. I was a little shocked that it was boarded up. But to be fair, everything leading up into and around Times Square got boarded up. I mean, and these were businesses that did it on their own. The Macy's guys were out there boarding it up when I got there. They were just they were just trying to do it as fast as they can. These weren't cops. These were the businesses taking their own initiatives.
No, I'm not talking about the boarding up. I'm talking about the fact that they got a little more protection than the mom and pop stores. You know, here's the other interesting thing about the news. I think that the news is still behind the times. They're using history. And I even saw the Reverend Al talking about this. They were going, how could these people destroy their own neighborhoods? And I'm like, dudes, this isn't Watts in the 60s, okay? These people are much more coordinated, and it's all not just black people from that neighborhood. Yep. It's every ethnic thing was brought in, and they're coordinated to go downtown, to go to different places. What was confusing to watch on TV is that you would go from New York to Philly to Miami, and I'm like, where am I what place is this?
Yeah.
And they were talking about they were trying to save the Joe's Pizza, and I'm screaming because really Joe's Pizza to me is the best in the village, and I would get a slice when I was doing the cellar in the underground, and I'm like, oh shit, Molly's is right across the street. Molly's New York. But then I realized that it was Philly, Joe's Pizza, and I'm like, oh. Okay, whatever. Whatever.
That's not a big deal.
There's a lot of places to get pizza there that aren't really close to.
Something I think that you're not going to see as much on the news too is like, and this was being shared on social media, and there's not just one or two of these videos. I saw quite a few where it would be white protesters either looting or spray painting graffiti, while black protesters are trying to stop them and being like, we are going to be blamed for this. And they're like, filming, look at this. This is a white kid doing this. Look at this. This is a group of white kids. And they're taking their anger out on this. This is not us. We are trying to stop them because we're the ones who are going to be blamed.
Well, I told you I've seen that in every protest before. There's always these young kids. They're like the Joker. And they're the ones that'll burn a flag or whatever. And it's all part of it. And I forget what they're calling them on TV now. They want to call them a terrorist group. What is it? The
Antifa?
Antifa. I mean, I don't know whether they're a terrorist group or they're, some rock throwers. And I don't even know if they all are. But there's always a couple kids like that. And I've seen those videos too. And, I mean, that's their thing. They want to show up and in the middle of the crowd do something they couldn't do alone, which is break shit. Earl, as a black dude, what was this like for you this weekend?
It was a combination of angry. I just had this weird feeling in the pit of my stomach all weekend, and then being there. I've been to a number of protests and marches. That was the first time I felt scared because you just didn't know where it was going to go, and then there would be these crowd surges of people, just massive amount of people running towards you, and you didn't know why, and you didn't know what was going on. And then you would hear the sound of something getting busted. And then at one point, when I was leaving on Broadway, it was like 17th, 18th, and 19th, someone was throwing matches into the garbage can and setting fires. And so it just saw it. It was like a row of fires.
Earl, I got to check here. Was that someone you?
No.
Were you the one doing that?
I'm afraid of matches. How could I set it?
Oh, you're right.
You're afraid of matches?
Yeah, he is. I always have to light a match for him.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, matches do not like him. He figured that out the same time that dogs don't like him. Now, Vito was at the protest, too. Earl was at the protest. I contacted both of them to let them know if you get caught up in anything, I have bail money. I always keep a little bail money at the house, because you got to go down there with cash. You can't go any other way. And I'm not making this up. I don't want these guys. I didn't want Earl went there to take pictures. I don't want anybody to think that he is a looter and gets grabbed. It happens, But I told Earl, I said, I got misdemeanor bail money. Felony bail money. What am I going to do? You know what I mean? Show up with 25 grand? No. Vito, where were you at during these protests?
So I actually was biking around the city, and I told my mom I wasn't going to get involved in anything because she was from a health perspective, she was nervous for herself, especially after Friday night. We were watching CNN together, and the CNN center standoff was just crazy to watch. So I'm biking around the next day. I'm on 88th and Columbus, and all of a sudden a march comes walking towards me. And they start blocking the street, and they needed people to help block the street so cars wouldn't try to barrel them over while they were marching down. So I put my bike away. I got onto the to the little human barricade with them and just helped block traffic. Then we walked a little down Columbus. I left my bike, marched with them a little down Columbus. It was it was completely by accident. I wish I had planned to go. But
you're like
Forrest
Gump.
Yeah, we both went for the same joke.
It was 100% by accident. I literally had to go put my city bike away. But it was so weird to see because I was in this one group and then I left it, and then 5 blocks away I saw another march coming down. And then this older woman comes up to me with her hands on her head, and she goes, "Have you seen my march?" And I said, "I don't know. Those guys are over there." And she said, "No, that's not them. I'm looking for my march." It was peaceful. Everybody was walking. They had a good system. They had a group of people on bikes going ahead, stopping cars. Nothing crazy. They weren't trying to hurt anybody in the cars. They were just stopping traffic so nobody would would try to hit them. And the one funny thing that happened during this was a little disagreement came out between all the protesters because a bus was trying to get by, and some of the protesters wanted to let the bus by, and some of the protesters didn't, and then that became a little argument of should we let the bus by.
Yeah, we're all there for different reasons. Now, Vito, to me, the funniest thing of all is that you just went along with a protest, that you actually locked your bike up. And I'm going to tell you why, Gail. And I don't want to get Vito in trouble with his chick. These young girls that I saw, they were gorgeous in this protest.
It was a young, attractive group of people. It was. Yeah, this weekend was. I accidentally joined a protest. I watched so much CNN this weekend that if a cable company calls you like a credit card company, they would think it was suspicious activity because for 3 days I didn't
That's hilarious.
I didn't turn off, starting with CNN Center. I don't know if you guys were watching the CNN Center standoff.
Oh yeah,
But it was
100%.
the skateboard
It
guy,
was
the white skateboard
the
guy
wildest.
throwing tasers off of his body. It was just
All right. That guy, here was the funny, I mean, you guys wouldn't know this, but he reminded me so much of my friend Paranoid that used to come in and write parody songs for us on DC. You know what I mean? Where you're like, he isn't a natural leader, but always finds himself in leadership positions.
yeah.
And that video of being in there was so exciting that when they did,
so insane.
you're watching it like it's a TV show. You're like, how is this going to pay off? Are they going to take CNN? Am I going to see protesters sitting behind the desk and talking?
Oh my God, dude, that moment was as shocking of one of the more shocking live TV experiences, watching that go down. Watching Skateboard Dude, like when he cuts his hand and the other kids come running over to like wrap his hand, but he doesn't stop. They don't take him away. He's like, I've started this thing, like I'm gonna finish it. It was so intense. The scopes on his chest, I was just like, what is that?
I know. It was incredible. It was incredible. People being upset about stuff. Can I just point something out? And I do think you got to look for the good here. No automatic weapons with the protesters. None. You know what I mean? You didn't see people carrying rifles down the street. And you also didn't see the cops pull out their weapons. They were shooting those annoying paintball things, which are,
Yeah.
scary and weird. But thank God that this isn't Kent State and they weren't shooting bullets. And what I worried about all weekend is somebody getting carried away and shooting, or a nut showing up and shooting. And the only person, and I know there was shooting in Louisville, but I'm going to be honest, I didn't feel like they focused. Like you said, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, they did not show Louisville that much. Now, the other thing is, the only guy I saw pull out a weapon and point it at the crowd was the bow and arrow guy, which was
hunting bow
so
guy.
fucking crazy. And luckily, he didn't kill anybody, and they didn't kill him when they started to hit him, that it turned amusing. Not all the assaults were amusing, but that definitely was, because he ended up getting around. He showed up with a bow and arrow and pointed it at the crowd and thought the cops would like him for it.
Yes, thought that he was being helpful. And I also think he must have thought it was going to go differently, because he pointed the bow, and I don't know if he thought that people were going to just be like, oh, sorry, sir, we'll stop what we're doing. But that's obviously not what people are going to do when they're being threatened with a weapon. And it very much, I think, didn't go the way he thought it would.
Look, if you want to show up to fight a bunch of people with a bow and arrow, you got to be Hawkeye. I mean, you have to be so good with
you
a
better be
bow and
Katniss.
arrow. Yeah, you're going to be considered a superhero by the end of it. Vito, did I use the wrong name when I said Hawkeye, or was that the guy?
no Hawkeye is the Avenger.
Okay. All right, because then I got scared after I said Hawkeye. I was like, fuck, I don't even know if that's it. Because I thought to myself, wait, he was on MASH. So I thought, Vito, that you were out from your video. I thought that you were out with your friends protesting like young citizens. You were not. You were just chasing tail.
No, I was not chasing tail. I just was biking around, ran into a friend on the corner, was talking to him. The protest came up, and then I felt like at that point I've said some stuff online, and I feel a certain way, and I felt like it wouldn't be right for me to not be a part of it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a very interesting thing, because a lot of people are saying this as race, but I also think that that's an old idea, that Black Lives Matter, I think, is way more important to young people. And I saw it in young comedians retweeting, saying places to give money. All the young people are 100% without, on Black Lives Matter. And as you get older, you start to hear, well, all lives matter. You know what I mean? Like you
Right.
start to get people who want to discuss it rather than people who have already thought about it and accept it. Across the board, that's the younger people.
Yeah.
And by younger, I'm going to probably say 35 and under have completely adopted that this needs to be done, and 35 and older seems to be going, well, wait, what about
Yeah.
women who get pushed around, okay.
I think too it was interesting because this is happening at the same time as a pandemic. So there's going to be people who would have shown up for protests but felt either that it wasn't, a safe
Good point.
environment to do so. And so, it really changed the dynamic of that. And because of that, you saw our youngest citizens showing up and, putting on their mask and going out and demonstrating. And then you saw people who didn't feel comfortable for the first time going, okay, so let's say I'm not there and I can't make a sign and my body isn't there. What can I do? And I thought that that was something that's really changed in previous protests. And I've seen last time is like so many people sharing places that you could donate to help, articles that you should read, just encouraging people to have a conversation about it. And I think for me, it was the first time that I really did a lot of self-reflecting. I think a lot of times people are like, I know I'm good, but I'm going to go, wag my finger at these other people. And this was the first time that I really felt like, I was holding a light to myself as well and saying, like, what can I do better? What have I not been smart about? What have I not realized about this whole situation? And there is so much depth to it.
Yes, you're not. This is what always comes up with certain things. People get uncomfortable with a problem that can't be fixed immediately. That's why you don't see TV shows where people are willing to discuss racism, because you won't have an answer at the end
Right.
of the hour.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's going to be a lifetime and more to
Definitely.
discuss.
And just think for a second, as exhausting as that might seem to us, like how incredibly exhausting that would sound if you were Black living in this country and you only have this one life to live and you want change now. And people have been saying go slow for so long,
Well, and that's how progress is made. Whether you like it or not, progress is made slowly. And there's no other way. And then there becomes the tipping point. And we saw that with gay rights. We went, in my lifetime, to people getting arrested for being gay, getting beat up and arrested for being gay, to gay marriage happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, at no point, if you were gay, would you have been satisfied. Even if you're gay, you're still not satisfied with the way that you treat it. But at least you could say the things have tipped over to that point where gay people can buy a home, teach at school. All this stuff was off the board. And at no point during my lifetime would you assume that you were making progress. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. At no point would you ever say, hey, things are getting better. And yet, if you stand back and go, look what happened between the Stonewall and gay marriage, the only people who thought they were making progress were probably church people going, these gays are getting more and more and more and more and more. You know what I mean? It's only the people that were frustrated probably thought they were making progress. But I never saw gay people celebrating a lot of wins over that time. And again, what I thought a lot of people had to realize this weekend, and I think maybe it was the only thing that made some sense with the news, is, and this I believe came from social media and then kind of drifted up into the national news, that this wasn't about one guy getting killed as much as it was about a guy getting the knee in the back of his neck over a $20 bill that was fake. And someone put their knee on his neck and stayed that way for 10 minutes until he died, right? As bad as that was, and it's fucking horrific, it was just one of many. And when you started to see that stuff go around of all the different faces, you know, and that again is tipping point stuff. That's people when people who disagreed, people who have always been on the side of the police, had to say, okay, you know what I mean? I'm still pro-police, but some of this has happened. Again, here's another unbelievable thing. To see the police come out against a fellow police officer. You know what I mean? When you see policemen around the country and say, I don't stand shoulder to shoulder with the person who did this, that's advancement, because the big problem people have with the cops is when one of them is in trouble, they draw in the ranks. And I understand that, because as a First Amendment person, I've defended tons of people who've said horrific things, but I would always think to myself, we've got to have that ability to talk, and you have to, you know, stand with the comic who says something stupid or the broadcaster who says something stupid. And this would have been, you know, the cop version of that is, you know, it's harder to be a cop than you think it is. And we don't always have a chance to work this stuff out. Sometimes you make a mistake. But in this case, they were going, you know what? That's too much. That's way too much. So we are making weird progress, even though it doesn't feel that way. It can be so depressing. I mean, this was a depressing weekend. It really was. But there's also, this is a birthing process. And I really believe this more than anything else. It doesn't feel this way, but a baton has to be passed from one generation to the other. And I think the big problem with this election is that you got two old guys who don't have anything more than the next few years at stake. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would love to see more young people involved, because it's going to be a long, long trudge out of this bullshit that my generation has put you into.
And also, you know, to that point, it's one of those things that when people say, you know, you're out there protesting and you're out there, you know, inciting violence, but why, you know, think about going home and registering to vote. There isn't anyone available to vote for who is going to take a deep look at police reform and fixing a broken criminal justice system the way that the young people want this now. You know what I mean?
Well, again, they're not going to do it by tomorrow, but it's going to happen. And it's happened more than you would think. First of all, most of these things have just come up because the cops have the body cameras, and also people in crowd now have video cameras, which would have been fairly impossible in the 60s and the 70s. You know what I mean? So, there are, like, if there wasn't video in Minneapolis, would we even be discussing this? No.
No, we would not be. No. That is the really, truly unfortunate thing, is it's happened countless times. And while this weekend was, difficult and painful and exhausting and stressful for everybody, we're only having this conversation because we saw that video and people are still out on the streets. And if tomorrow everyone went home and the conversation would end for people who are not affected by it every day.
Well, that's why I said hopefully these things will have, like, it's not going to have a Martin Luther King thing where the shame is on the other side. You know what I mean? Like, the beauty of what Martin Luther King did was you couldn't sit back and blame both sides. You know what I mean? They were willing to be bit by dogs, shot by water cannons, whatever. So you could eventually go, look how these people are being treated. This time, when you see looting, you're going to fuck certain people up. But at the end of the day, if there wasn't a Stonewall, and if that didn't go on for days like it did, a lot of people wouldn't have said, wait, what are these gay people asking for? A chance to dance together? A chance to date? A chance not to get beat up? You know what I mean? Yeah, I get it. They have a point. And that's, something that came out of, that was violent, but did force newspapers to write, hey, what went on in the fighting, that's a bad thing. But, also, what are they asking for? To be able to hang out at a bar and dance with each other without the cops coming in and slapping them? So it can be positive. I'm going to go to the phones here. Tiki in Boston. Tiki.
Ronnie B, how's it going?
Good.
Yeah, man. So I heard you on your show on Friday, and I was going to call on Friday originally, but this shit was too heavy, and I didn't want to call and just kind of be part of the problem. But, man, for me, having grown up in South Africa, I moved here in 2002 when I was 15 years old. So my parents literally went through that whole getting over apartheid stuff, and they were in the streets, and they were getting water cannons and dogs sent to them. Like, this is literally, like, within my lifetime. When I was born, essentially the shit was still going on. In the 90s, it kind of got cleared up, but it's still there. So coming here and seeing this and hearing people say, okay, there's progress, 100% agreed, and I'm glad you brought up Stonewall. That was definitely a sign of progress. But without that violence, like you said, there would be no coverage of this, or there'd be less coverage. Mm-hmm. There'd be less opinions. I don't really mind, even if you're on the side of, like, anti-looters. The point is you're talking about this, and the difference is, like Gail said, and you said, there are videos now. So you can watch Fox News, you can watch CNN, and you can say, okay, these are quote-unquote reputable sources, I'll get my news from them. Or you can jump on Twitter and watch the videos. And I don't mean Twitter and watch the tweets. I mean actually just watch the videos and make your own opinion. So for me, the violence, I think, is part of the change. Like you're saying, it's a birth. Sure, I don't condone it. I think it's wrong. I think it pulls away from the message. And like you said, Martin Luther King did it perfectly. But, man, change is messy. It never comes perfect. And I think this violence, I don't know, I don't want to say it's a positive thing, but I think it moves us forward. I'll say that. I think it moves us forward.
Well, it can. We're at the point, right, like this could be a possibility of moving stuff forward. And if you look at South Africa, nothing changed more than South Africa over the course of my lifetime. And a person who spent years in jail, considered a criminal, ended up running the country and preached nonviolence. You know what I mean? And he was willing to do the time. You never heard him say, oh, by the way, I'm so furious about all those years that I spent in jail. You know what I mean? He saw it as a service to the greater good. But we didn't ever think that there was progress in South Africa until there was. All right, thanks for calling. And yeah, of course this shit gets depressing. It's very, very depressing. But you have to look across generations. You know what I mean? You have to look at it as we're planting trees. And this may not seem like progress to people, but I watched all three news and as much as the national stations as I could. Fox News said, obviously the cop was wrong in Minneapolis. Obviously the other people should be looked at there as well. That's not something that you saw Fox News say in the past. They never, this whole thing, we have to watch out for any kind of stuff that you don't view as propaganda that may be, right? And some of it is when you say, I support the troops no matter what. I support the police no matter what. I support school teachers, whatever. That shit just becomes something that you say but don't necessarily believe. And it also can keep you from thinking. You know what I mean?
Yes. Because you think what you've said is enough. And that was kind of what I was talking about, too, with the self-reflection, is that let's say you feel like, oh, man, I just feel terrible about everything that's happening. Feeling bad about it is not enough. And there are times that you can say that you probably felt good about yourself. Or maybe you patted yourself on the back because you were like, I am such a good ally. You know what I mean? You take a look at those moments and look at your motivation and what did you do? And did you do it for a self-interested reason? These are really difficult things, but it's just like if you're going to challenge everybody, you do have to reflect on those things. And part of it is saying empty things that you're like, I think if I put this as my profile pic, that might be enough, or like, and it isn't. And that goes for everybody. Whatever your viewpoint is, sometimes these little slogans keep you in the way of thinking. Certainly anybody who says support the troops, and you say, well, why do you support the troops? And then you say, because they fight for our freedoms and they put their life on the line for our freedoms. And this is literally what these kids are doing right now on the street. And so if you say support the troops, just think about what it is that you support about them. And maybe that could be a way to relook at this situation.
There's also a childishness to some of those answers. They fight for our freedoms. Sounds like something a 5-year-old would say rather than an adult. Because a lot of times support the troops really turns into support the industrial military complex and not the human beings that are actually troops that go through all this shit and come back. And so many of them have felt displaced when they got here. We've had incredible high suicide rate, all that kind of stuff. You're not really supporting the troops by saying that.
And I think another aspect of something to take a look at, and they're doing something that's business as usual for them, is news, cable news, and whether it's a cable news network that you think is conservative or liberal. Across the board, they're very interested in looters, and they're very interested in showing images of looters. But, I don't know if they had the same care for small businesses while we were going through this quarantine, while, wealth was being distributed to, companies that, multi-million-dollar companies, and not to small businesses. I don't think that they had the same passion for small businesses then, so you have to take a look at, they're reporting things that are sexy for them.
Look, if you're looking at any of those news corporations, and we call them news, but 95% of what they present is opinion. There's a couple actual news people doing news work, but they're not gathering news. Most of the time they're reflecting on something that was either written on the New York Times or Breitbart or the Post or Axios, and you name it. They're commentators. But their job, whether you're right bent or left bent, their job is to keep you watching, That's the job of cable news. And I always laugh when they say this: somebody's show is not good, or somebody's show is good, depending on the ratings. It's the news. Why would you give a fuck if you're watching the number 1 news or the number 5 news? Who gives a shit? It doesn't matter in terms of the news. You'd want to say, who's putting across the story that is the best story? Not who's got the most viewers. Who gives a shit about that? But for some reason, the media even reports on, this person, tonight, Hannity was beat by Rachel Maddow. That hasn't happened in 15 weeks or 22 months, whatever. Who gives a shit? I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care if the most... Are you breaking the news stories should be the thing that matters.
Yeah.
All right, a lot of people want to talk to this. Tim in Florida. Tim, go ahead.
Hey, Ron and Gail, good to hear y'all's voices.
Hey.
Yeah, I mean, this is all stuff that's been going on, and it's annoying that it's acting out now, but I don't blame the cops as much as I blame our quote-unquote leaders. You know, that's who this is all about, because they've been letting this happen for years and years and years, and now all of a sudden it becomes an issue. You know, I'm sure Gail's been concerned about this for years. I'm sure you have too. I'm sorry, let me stop. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this is more than one lifetime's worth of problems. More than one lifetime's worth of problems. And the truth is, no matter how you feel about cops, you're probably wrong. You know what I mean? If you're anti-cop, you need cops. You need somebody to be there. You do. You might not like the way some cops act. I'm sure you've had negative and positive run-ins with the police before, no matter who you are. But can we agree that the way that I've had to interact with cops and the way that Earl has had to interact with cops are two different experiences? I've never been at the point in my life where I thought I could get shot here on this pulling over.
Yep.
And Earl has had those experiences. Earl, how do you there was some people this weekend, they were talking about the talk, the way that black parents have to talk to their teenage son so he doesn't do something during that interaction that could make it worse. Explain that to us from your point of view.
Well, the talk was always what to do when approached by a cop. How do you address them? Do you address them by sir? Do you address them by officer? Do you address them by and certain rights that you have? I mean, a lot of people don't know that you have certain rights and certain questions you can ask a police officer when confronted. Like you could ask, hey, am I under arrest? You don't have to answer all their questions. You don't have to necessarily do everything they tell you to do. Like, if they say, can we search you? You can say, hey, am I under arrest? Okay, no, I'm not. I'm free to go. So it's always that, and always keep your hands in front of you, where like always have your hands visible. That's the biggest one, because how many times have we heard, hey, he was going into his pocket. Hey, he was reaching for something. Hey, like, always keep your hands visible. These are all the things that I had to be told, and black kids have to be told. And I don't know necessarily white kids had to go through that.
Well, I will say this. I think the two news stories, when you saw in Michigan, those people go into the state capitol loaded with automatic weapons. And all you have to do is imagine if you saw black people doing that. You know what I mean? Would that have went down the way that it went down? And the obvious answer is no. It just isn't true.
Right.
Whether you're white or black, you could look at that story and say, I'm not going to feel, comfortable with a bunch of black people going into that thing. with automatic weapons. Probably black people wouldn't even be comfortable because they've never seen that before. You know what I mean? Like, they were like, I hope they don't fuck up.
Well, the Panthers did that. I think the day they went to the state legislature building, armed to the teeth, but with the weapons in the air, and
those were shotguns, by the way.
Yeah, shotguns. But what ended up happening was they changed the law. Reagan signed into law banning open carry in California specifically because of that.
Now, here's the interesting thing. Go back to that name. Ronald Reagan passed an anti-gun law because black dudes were carrying shotguns walking down the street.
Yeah, as governor, he signed that into law. He didn't. He could have vetoed that law. He was an NRA member, and he said, "Man, maybe this is a good idea."
Of course, it was a good idea. The Panthers were carrying guns. Of course, we're gonna fucking freak out over that. That's the fucking funny thing. In 50 years, the anti-gun people haven't figured out. Hey, if you want gun laws, arm black people. If you arm black people, we will get some gun laws.
You've been doing it wrong.
Yeah, you're doing it the wrong way. All right, let's go over to Daniel in New Jersey. Daniel in New Jersey.
Hey, what's up, Ron? And
hey, man.
Everyone else. Yeah, that guy you was talking about with the bow and arrow, there's a video. There's two videos. There's one video of him getting jumped by the crowd, which was all white people. And then there's another video of him getting interviewed by the news. And he said, they asked him what happened. He said, 2 black guys beat him up. I swear.
I swear, I saw that too. And here's the thing. When that video came out, right, that was him being interviewed on TV. TV had not seen what the rest of us saw, the Twitter video that went around. So he basically said he pulled up in his car. He said that all lives matter. He yelled out the window, and they pulled him out of the car. That fucking guy jumped out of the car with a bow and arrow. And again, thank God he was hysterical. You know what I mean? Like, this could have been, seconds away from being incredibly tragic.
Of course,
but it was more of a farce. Gail, if you go over to our stories, and I brought this up, comedians really stepping up and being part of this. Comedians have been marching in protests all around the country. Do you have that? And if you look here in Boston, it looks like Joe List, part of the crowd there.
Wow, I would have never spotted that.
There's Philadelphia. I think that's Big J. Went down to his hometown of Philadelphia and got part of it. Giannis Papas is there in Brooklyn. Dan Soder, Denver. I think what Dan was doing would be considered kind of a contrasting protest. I think he was there for the other. I think Dan was there as part of the All Lives Matter. But at least he's out there being heard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He has a voice too. Yeah, he has a voice too. In New Orleans, I was surprised to see this. Mark Norman was there. Mark Norman.
Comedy. Protest.
Comedy. Lisa Traeger in Chicago. Well, she's with the lefties all the time. You're not going to get around that. And finance in a very small Wilmington, Delaware. It's small, but Biden showed up there today, so it must have done something. And by the way, look at Wilmington, Delaware. Their cop cars are really old. Those cop cars look like the 80s. Trenton, and we wanted to do this together. It's the old Creeps with Kids. We came back together after all these years. All 4 of us were out there that day, socially distancing from each other, as you could see.
Yeah. That's responsible.
And also up on our Instagram, some thug. I'm going to just flat out and call him what he is, a thug who had destroyed a car in the Upper East Side. and you just see him just kicking the hell out of it. Doing his best to keep his weight down. I mean, at a time where a lot of people were eating ice cream.
It's impressive.
Yeah. And by the way, that thug only wears that kind of mask when he's being filmed. So I'm going to say a little bit arrogant there. Kevin in New Jersey has a question for us. Kevin.
How you doing, Ron and Gail?
Hey, man, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, man, I hear that you named the names of all the comedians, but did you see Amy Schumer on Black News on Revolt? That's the P. Diddy news station. She was on with Jamel Hill and Van Lathan. He was a gentleman from. He got left. Well, he didn't get left, but he. He left. He was a gentleman who, anchor on. I can't think of the name of it.
One of the news stations.
One of the news stations, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, but she was
All
on.
right.
Since you've been talking about her on her show Cooking with Amy, she was on there kind of rambling about the George Floyd execution. So I just wanted to bring it up to you and see if you saw it and you could bring the clip.
No,
if you like.
I didn't see it. Let's see if we can find that clip. But I appreciate it, Kevin. Thanks a lot.
I did see that she was on there.
I know that she's been, learning to cook, and that takes up most of your time.
Sure.
But, I'm glad that she's out there. Let's go to Terry in New York now. Terry.
Hey guys, how you doing today?
Hey,
Yeah, what's up?
So yeah, the whole all lives matter thing to me is just white people wanting to deny there's white privilege. And Ron, I have a background like you. I'm 40. I'm 4 years sober. Thankfully, I was able to, turn my life around and get a job. I have a kid now, a wife. But I got pulled over probably 15, 20 times, either holding or high during the periods leading up to those years. And if I was a black guy, I'd probably be in jail where I might have belonged, to be honest with you. The opportunities would never have been there for guys like you and I to turn their lives around.
100%.
Really nothing more that these people have to lose at a certain point, and it's an awful, awful fact for white people to deny. And I don't understand if it's like some self-congratulatory need to pat themselves on their back to get themselves to a spot in life that they're already born. I don't understand why it is so hard for them to just admit life is easier for you and it's not the way it should be. And what can we do to make it better for the guys who aren't you? It baffles me. I'm not a guy who's against the cops. I grew up on Long Island, so my best friends are NYPD cops. I'm talking to them constantly. I'm worried for their safety. But this has to stop.
All right, thanks so much. Yeah, of course, it doesn't always occur to you that you've had white privilege because it's just come from your point of view. But yes, if you have a person like myself who crossed the line quite a few times with the law and only for drunk driving and drug-related stuff and all that, pulled over and got the break when I've even been busted of, hey, you're from a good family. You don't want to ruin your life now. That doesn't always happen for black kids of the same age.
And, another thing that's kind of, it's difficult to see it because it's not something that you're conscious of, right? It's not like, oh, I've noticed I receive privileges. Is that you don't have to think about your race as holding you back. And I think I've said before on the show that, it's almost like people have a negative reaction to it because they don't like the word privilege, because you might have grown up poor, you might have had hardships in your life, you might have gone through terrible struggles, and you don't want to think of yourself as privileged. And I saw that, somebody else had pointed this out this weekend, that another thing is we're also not used to being identified as white. You know what I mean? We don't normally have to be. Normally when somebody tells a story about you, they're not like, so there's this white guy. You know what I mean? It sounds very weird to our ear. It's almost accusatory, right? Like when we hear it. But the idea is that you are being afforded something that you can't see all the time and you don't notice it. This weekend, a friend of mine just had a baby, And so I made her some food, and I went to take it over to her apartment building and just buzz up and leave it there because it's quarantine and I can't help her the way I normally would. And she lives in an incredibly, really nice building, lots of wealthy folks. She lives in the penthouse on the top, right? It's an insane building. And I go there and I buzz the door. Neighbors come in and out. I'm dropping food off. Nobody is looking at me like I shouldn't be there. Nobody's asking, who I am or what apartment I am, and nobody's calling the police. And that's not something I think about. I don't think about, hey, is it safe if I come to this person's house? I don't look suspicious. It would never occur to me.
Well, two things when you say all lives matter. Well, first of all, you're saying all lives matter, but you're not realizing that the reason why Black lives matter is they haven't been considered part of all lives matter. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Obviously, our
It's
lives
implied.
matter. Yes,
Right.
it's already a play. Black Lives Matter probably would have been better branding to say Black Lives Matter 2, TOO.
Right.
Because that's what they are saying. So when you say all lives matter, you're not thinking.
Right.
You're literally not thinking when you say that. And
It's also the trouble with. It's also the trouble with Blue Lives Matter, where people are like, and I'm for Blue Lives Matter, and we're like, they've always mattered, and in fact, they've always been held in very high esteem and regard. So that's something you don't, you know what I mean? Like that's already there. They're included in the all lives.
If you want to see whether Blue Lives Matter or not, look at the reaction that the police have when someone kills a cop. Every cop is on that case, and they will find that son of a bitch. But that doesn't necessarily happen in every case, and I think a cop would even admit that that's true. And the reason why it's almost like if someone kills a kid, people are going to pay more attention. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The cops get freaked out when somebody kills a cop because that's considered, a very dangerous person that does that. Look, I'll give you an example right now. We're ready to call the fucking National Guard in Minneapolis, right? We do that very quickly. Why haven't we ever called the National Guard in the south side of Chicago? The fact that you say, what about black on black crime is almost fucking ridiculous to me because the people that are the victims a lot of times have nothing to do with what's going on here. But if there was a white serial killer in the Upper East Side of New York, we wouldn't be calling that white on white crime. It's fucking crazy. You would say there's a crazy criminal going around killing people.
Exactly.
Sade wants to tell us, Sade in Las Vegas.
Hi, how are you guys doing? So
Nice to
I just
talk to
wanted
you.
to say that I'm not really sure that black families are really teaching their children how to interact with police officers in the way that I hear people say that we're doing. I think it's pretty obvious that that's not going on. And I mean, that's what not in the case of the gentleman that was just murdered, but for the most part, there's a very hostile relationship. And I don't think that's being taught, and I think that's what the issue is.
Now you're black, Sade?
Yes.
Okay. So you think that a lot of black kids kind of bring that on with the police?
Absolutely. I really do. Now, again, I know I shouldn't be saying this given what's just happened. But, I mean, I'm actually surprised at the way that people, or at least black people that I've encountered, think of the police as someone that you're supposed to fight against or that you have some potential to fight against, someone that you're arguing with, someone that, you fuck the police, you want to harm them. And I just think that even the fever of what's going on right now even still perpetuates that. And I just don't think that that's good for the relationship with the police.
All right, Earl, do I have you on the line?
Yes, you do.
Did you hear what Sade had to say?
Yes, and there's parts of it I strongly disagree with, mainly because a lot of that distrust is based on the fact that, and I'm speaking purely from my experience, is that in any interaction with police, for me and for a lot of people that I know that are black, we wear the perks, regardless of the situation. Like, you could approach them and say, "A crime is being committed," and they'll be like, "What did you have to do with it?" And there's this, and it wears on you, and it grates on you, and black on black crime. In regard to that, most of those crimes don't get solved. They don't aggressively pursue those crimes. You know what I mean? Like, so then there's that distrust. So
All right. Yeah. All right. Let's go back to her original point. She's saying that she hears on the news that black kids get the talk. Do you agree with her that that doesn't happen as much, or do you feel like it happens quite a bit?
I think growing up in New York City, you had to have had it because it was inevitable. It was just a vibe that was always there. That you're gonna be in a situation where, given my age, I grew up in the 80s. It was a dangerous time. You were going to encounter a cop. In the 90s, you were going to encounter a cop. Not so much in the 2000s because the crime rate went down, but then stop and frisk came along. So guess what? You're going to have an encounter with a cop. So, of course, you had to have that talk because it was inevitable. At some point in your life, you were going to have this interaction, and if you fit that profile, which I was told by a cop, which was 18 to 99, and you're a male, you were going to have that encounter. So, yes, we did have that talk.
All right, Sade. Thank you for calling us, though, buddy.
All right, thanks.
You be safe, pal. Now, here's the interesting thing about Earl, and I don't think we often talk about this. Earl's the only person I know that is very much involved with all black organizations and all black issues, and then has come up in what would be considered close to an all white world, which is the rock world. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. He has always been involved with his parties tend to be either all white people and Earl or all black people and Earl.
Yeah.
Am I right when I say that, Earl?
Yeah, 100%. But the other side was, like, I was the last wave of students that got bused into white schools.
Right.
And that went all the way through high school. Like, I never went to the high school. I was walking distance from an elementary school in my neighborhood. I didn't go to it. I was walking distance from a high school. I didn't go to it. And so I got to see both worlds, and I got to see, frankly, white privilege at work. I've seen kids get away with some of the most incredible crap, but because they were white and they came from a good family and this, that, and the other, they got the slap on the wrist, they got the talk, whatever. Then I had friends of mine who did less, got caught, and they got the book thrown at them. So
no, and no one really talks about that. I mean, first of all, the whole thing of not changing a kid's life because of something that he did at 15, 16, 17, sometimes even 20, even when they're an adult. You're like, I don't want you to go down the wrong path. I'm going to give you another shot. I get that. That's kind of a positive thing. You know what I mean? But it doesn't get offered to minority kids the same way it gets offered to white kids. And I don't know whether that's a reflection of the kid, the neighborhood, or the way the families are looked at.
I remember the New York Times, there was a judge in Florida. The Times reviewed basically a lot of his cases, and they found similarities in a lot of the cases. And they presented this judge, and they said, you realize one black, one white, you threw the book at the black guys, you gave the second chance to the white guys. And even the judge was astonished at the findings. He was like, it had nothing. He was denying that race had nothing to do with it, but it was there on the record. And so I think there's this odd, deep-seated perception that, again, I've always felt like, in the eyes of law enforcement, in the eyes of the criminal justice system, black equals perp. You can't redeem that.
Well,
it's going to happen. And I don't believe that, and I've never believed that.
Here's the deal, too, that people have to realize about prejudice. Prejudice doesn't necessarily mean the same thing as racist. People will go, I'm not prejudiced, because they don't believe that they're racist. You could always find somebody who's more racist than you. But the fact of the matter is, you are prejudiced. It just means to prejudge. So even if you're like, hey, I think Asian girls are hot, and I think Dominicans like to fist fight. You know what I mean? Like, whatever you have these thoughts, you don't even necessarily notice them as being racist. But you are fucking prejudiced. I'm prejudiced. Everyone has prejudice. Just fucking admit that before you go on. Just use the steps to go. First step, I'm going to admit it.
Yeah. 100%. And that's the hardest thing to do, because we all view ourselves as the good guy in the situation. And when you look at the top of the pyramid and you go, well, of course, somebody who murders, somebody who lynches a black man on the street, I think that they deserve justice. And no, I don't use the N-word. But then you go deeper down onto the pyramid and you have to look at the things that you do in your life that are still under that umbrella. It's just maybe not as extreme.
Of course. That's exactly right. If you're going to fucking give yourself a pat on the back because you think that because you're not actively attacking people that you're okay, I mean, you've set the lowest fucking bar that you could for yourself. Yep. And let me tell you something. I grew up in what would be considered a middle-class neighborhood. Not the highest part of middle class, but it was a middle class neighborhood. It's a racist neighborhood. We had a black neighborhood right next to ours. They weren't welcome to move where we lived or cut through our neighborhood. Also, we did not cut through their neighborhood. You know what I mean? Like, that was a given. I did not sit down as a young person and go, why? You know, why aren't we playing fucking together? You just accept it because that's the way reality is. It's adulthood when you start to break that down. The way I was taught eeny, meeny, miny, mo would probably appall Earl. Now, what age did I learn that? 3, 4, 5? You know what I'm saying? So that's already stuck into my head. Yes, of course you're fucking prejudiced. You grew up in this world. It's tribal. There's a lot of tribal shit that happens. That's why when you see this stuff, if you know you're an adult, is when you can think to yourself, can I take a look at the world through somebody's eyes other than my own? One of the worst fucking things that you can do is try to use your experience to decide the universal truth of the world. It's stupid. It's dumb. But you also see Americans, we don't sit around and wonder, are we the worst people that ever existed because we're the only people who dropped the atom bomb? Or you hear about what happened with the Native Americans, and we don't toss and turn about that. You hear it and you go, oh, that was terrible. But, you know, we wanted to spread our shit out from Europe, and yeah, we built some tall buildings and put the trains in, and, you know, we've done some good. We don't wrestle with our own fucking guilt. It's bullshit if you think that we do. We have, the fact is that we look at the founding fathers like they were fucking saints, secular saints, when they did not include women And there was actually some inclusion of black men. I forget, Earl, maybe you know this. Did they act like a black man was like 3/5 or something? There was
Yeah, three. I think it was a Supreme Court decision, Dred Scott decision.
This is the interesting thing about that. So, a black man was 3/5 of what a white man was, right? Now, here's the weird thing about that. That it was accepted, but even weirder, somebody worked out the math to figure out where you were. And that first they came back with like 1.25, and other people are like, oh, come on. I think we could do a little better than that. You know what I mean? I think they're worth a little more than a half. All right, let's make it 3/5. And then everybody went, okay. Not crazy about it, but I'll agree with it. I mean, this shit we don't wrestle with. We're like, oh, that all happened before me. So, I don't have to be part of it. Oddly, if you look at our history, the American history is filled with original sin. Both race and misogynistic. It just is. You don't have to fucking sit around and debate it. It's fact. So when this stuff comes up, right, what we're dealing with all weekend long, and it's fucking heartbreaking, and it's frustrating when you see somebody throwing a brick. You're pissed off. You're pissed off when you see a person crying, saying, this was my store. My whole entire life was put into this store, and someone came along and wrecked it. That shit is also happening because we refuse to deal with our past. We never have. You know what I mean? I remember reading that Asian people, Japanese people were put into camps during World War II, and I could go, oh, that's awful. I wouldn't put somebody in a camp, and then moving on from there and not feeling any, responsibility about it.
But, I'm just curious about this because I have heard so much of that, that like people, nice folks, people who, acquaintances of mine, family, who first response to this was, I just feel so bad for the store owners. And I'm just... And that's totally, I get where that comes from. Why is that easier for them to access? Why is it so comfortable to say to maybe your neighbor or your family member, why is that the easier conversation to go, isn't this a shame how many windows were broken? I don't get that.
I have a theory, and I just have it right. This is right now. My theory is it's easier for me to understand what it's like to have a store and have it looted is an easier place for me to go than to understand what Earl goes through every day.
Yes.
And that's me saying that. I don't know what Earl goes through every day, even though I've been friends with Earl for 20 years. And I've had to say to Earl on 57th Street, when we were out, I'm trying to get a cab, and we're out front talking. And this is after midnight when there's nothing but cabs. Earl, can you take a couple steps back so they don't think that you're with me and I can catch my cab? And that's fucking happened. Not once, not twice, a lot of nights where I'd have to say, Earl, back it up a little bit. I'm trying to get a cab here. And yet, it's easier for me to understand what it's like to be selling fucking hardware than it is to imagine what it's like. And I've never ran a store in my life. I've never even worked in a store. And yet that's simple for me to think. Could that be my life? But Earl's life, it's harder for me to imagine.
Yeah.
The one stat I heard today over the weekend was when they deployed the National Guard in Minneapolis. They said it was like 13,000 men and women are going to have to go in harm's way because they couldn't arrest 4 guys.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Look, when we're talking about white privilege, let's all be honest. There could be a poster of white privilege, and it's Chris Stanley. And he has, I mean, this was a person, he went to college, and how did he treat that? Selling mushrooms. Was he arrested for it? No. He went to another college.
Interesting. Yeah.
And now how does he spend the weekend when people need his help? Baking fine breads.
You know what? I'm going to call him out. I spoke
Chris?
to him this morning, and something else he did this weekend. I heard he ate some lobster. I mean, what's more white privilege than eating lobster?
You fuck.
What? I didn't know that. I didn't know there was going to be protests. But why should that matter if I'm eating lobster?
Guess what? As Rome burns, Nero is fucking. I bet he didn't even pick the lobster up. I bet he had his girlfriend pick up the lobster, dip it in butter, and put it in his disgusting neckbeard mouth.
Unbelievable.
It was delicious.
Little Lord Fauntleroy, you probably was in short fucking pants, high socks.
How'd you know? Terrible times.
Oh boy, here we come. Well, hold on. He's getting serious, everybody. Brace yourself. Food Network's own Chris Stanley is started with these are terrible times. I'm sorry. It's hard to understand you when you have a mouthful of lobster.
Look, lobster's delicious. Everyone knows that. I don't know why I should be pointed out for just like I enjoyed some lobster over the weekend. Yeah, there was terrible things happening, but it doesn't mean I can't ingest food or bake bread.
The rest of us could hardly eat or sleep, and he's over there indulging in lobster. Buttered lobster.
Here's what's happening. We've got 3 producers. 2 of them went to the protests to support. The other one sat around eating lobster and watching Elon Musk shoot a toy into space. Hey, by the way, Elon Musk and Trump both thought that that was going to be the big story over the weekend. We finally shot somebody into space after 9 years, and they got what? Half an hour probably each, and then no one wanted to discuss it again. Now,
it was
here's
the slightest
other thing.
palate cleanser.
Here's the other thing that's so bad. I told you when I was a kid, and this is true of every American who grew up when I did, we were obsessed with the space program. The space program was our Michael Jordan, okay? Where we sat around just thinking about the space program and having posters and little coloring books and everything. To look at that thing and go, here we are, 50 years later, and this is a lamer project that I could not get excited about seeing 2 guys that were going to go, 8 miles into space, however far they went, when I used to sit around and watch people go to the moon 50 years ago.
Yeah, my husband was really disappointed because he went to the kitchen to get some coffee and he came back and I was like, you missed the landing. And he goes, wait, they're back? He's like, I thought they were going to go somewhere.
No, they did. They just landed the capsule part. They're up. They're still up in space, and they're going to be there for a month. They're not back. This isn't the Mercury project. This is the International Space Station, and while we're bragging about that, we're still sharing a space station. So. Let's not act like it's all pro-American. We got to knock on the door and a Russian is opening up to let us in. But the only thing that has changed, right, is that the nerds that tell you about the space, what we're going to be doing, some of them are women now. That's the only difference that I saw from years ago. Is that, and it didn't even occur to me. I'll go, oh, we never used to have women talking about it. And Chris, you're a guy who you don't even like Elon Musk.
No, he's a cuck. I don't like him at all. He's a braggadocious douche. I mean, congrats, Elon. You fucking shot a couple guys into space. Big deal. You're still an asshole.
All right, I'll listen to braggadocious and I'll even maybe take douche, but why cuck? How has he been cucked out in this situation?
When did he watch his wife have sex with another man?
I'm sure Grimes. I'm sure that's not his baby. That's what I'm saying. I think that's someone else who impregnated.
You're not
Grimes.
sure. And what you say right now sets you up for, and you know that he'll sue people.
I know. He tried to sue that man who just tried to save children because, and then he fucking called him a pedophile. He's terrible.
By the way, he didn't try to sue. He got sued by that guy.
Well, good point.
Yeah.
He's a jerk.
You know, like when people say stuff like, if someone does something, and they'll go, well, you know, it's not rocket science. This guy actually does rocket science. The one point that we were like, hey, that's something smart people work on, rocket science. And Chris has a problem with him.
Yeah, he just hires people. He just hires rocket scientists. If I had enough money, I could just hire a bunch of fucking rocket scientists to make Chris Stanley SpaceX or whatever. But I don't have the cash.
How did he get the cash? By inventing things, you idiot. He literally...
PayPal? Big deal. Oh, I can send money over the internet? Who couldn't figure that out?
Well, everyone else besides him. Here was my favorite thing. First of all, I come from the NASA background as a child fan, right? So it'd be captain, major, all this stuff. Now I'm watching these guys going, Bob and Doug have made their way to the capsule. Bob and Doug. Goo, 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 goo. That's literally the Great White North guys from the 80s. Bob and Doug McKenzie. Singing songs about beer. Bob and Doug are now in the capsule. It was so ridiculous. Look,
Bob and Doug
Chris,
were less than.
And Chris, you hire people to make bread for you. So who are you to say?
That's bullshit. I make all that bread myself with my own two hands.
I don't know. We never see your two hands connected. I don't know. I keep looking at this thing on Instagram, and I'm going to be honest here. To see a person busting up a car for his own joy drives me crazy.
It's ridiculous.
And I mean, he's just beating the shit out of this. It's almost like he has superhuman strength. And look at the front of that car; it's just hammered in there because you can see those kicks. They're just coming.
Yeah, the kicks are
out of nowhere.
So strong.
And you know,
By the way,
honestly, I don't even see anyone jumping in. You know what I mean? To me, I feel like this person is, starting shit. You know what I mean? This is one person acting this way.
Gail, you got to understand somebody. Someone jumps in on this guy, they're going to get fucked up. You know what I mean? I mean, this guy is obviously powerful.
Even the cops fear him in this moment. They're letting him do this damage. They can't stop him.
Oh, my little police station was locked down over the weekend, too. And I'm like, no one's coming here. No one's coming here. I don't know. I guess, was every police station around the city locked down?
I don't know. I don't know if that was across the board that way.
The one in my neighborhood was.
Earl, would you be willing to reach across the aisle and help out a little bit and kind of bring the community together with the cops?
I would love to. I would love to try to bridge the divide.
I'm going to have you work with Chris Stanley after the show. Parody song. You ready for this, Gail? And I can't believe. I mean, I don't know why my mind's working like this today. I'm just on top of it. Ready for this parody song? Help the police. Help, 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 help the police. If you see something, say something. Help, help, help the police. Get that done, Chris and Earl.
Okay. Ebony and Ivory 2.0.
I don't want that racist fucking song brought into it.
Yeah. And I also don't want Chris on it.
Here's what annoys me about Ebony and Ivory, and I said this I said it right to Paul McCartney's grandma face. I go, why give the black people the keys that basically no one uses? They barely get touched. Yet those are the keys. And why wasn't there a black Beatle? Yeah. Why wasn't there one black fucking Beatle?
Terrible.
And not fifth Beatles. Fifth Beatles they throw around like it's nothing.
Yeah, they always throw around Billy Preston as being the fifth Beatle.
No.
How many people do they give the name fifth Beatle to? Like 16.
I was a fifth Beatle for a while.
Let me ask you a favor, Chris. Could you shut your racist, privileged fucking mouth for 5 fucking seconds?
Have some more lobster, Chris.
Yeah. Head back out to the Hamptons that your grandmother left you that fucking house. If I could just talk without being interrupted by you, Chris. Can I do that?
Yes, I apologize.
Okay. You, Chris Stanley, you disgusting pedophile.
What?
Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, I thought I was going to have the opportunity to express myself, Chris.
Let him finish, please, Chris.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Hear him
Chris
out.
Stanley.
Sometimes it's hard to hear these things.
You wingman for Jeffrey Epstein. We know exactly.
No.
See, I can't even talk because he's so used to driving his agenda.
Please go on. Chris, stop silencing him.
These things aren't true, but I'll stop talking.
Do you feel like we've fixed the country today? I kind of feel like we did, you know?
I think we fixed ourselves.
That's where it's got to start, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And with body positivity, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Movement. If you go over to our Instagram, on the Instagram stories, you will see the amount of comedians who supported the protest that were involved. There's a Joe List picture in there. Big J. Okerson, which was surprising to me. Giannis Pappas, Dan Soder. Pretty good shot of Mark Norman. Lisa Traeger. And Finance, an embarrassingly small one. But Wilmington is not a major city.
No, that's true.
They have a minor league baseball stadium almost in the middle of their town. I'm not making that up. And then the Creeps with Kids came out. If I'm going to be honest here, we didn't spend a lot of time at it. It was considered a photo opportunity at best. We said, let's get in, get some headshots done there, get out, get it out to all the news organization. The Creeps support the blacks.
Mm-hmm.
We should have had one black creep, and we were asked time and time again to put one on the show, and we had the opportunity. But who do we get rid of? Voss?
I guess you just answered that question.
Guess who? Yeah, that would have been the answer. But Keith Robinson was constantly saying, I want to be in the Creeps with Kids. And then I remember, and now I see this as racist. I said to him, Keith, this is Creeps with Kids, not Crips with Kids.
And now you know that was wrong. You know, you did a little self-reflection. You're looking back on it.
It wasn't so much self-reflection, but pointed out to by a mob of internet people.
After some thought and reading about a couple thousand tweets, I see now.
I now see. I'm going to take a little time to stop talking and start listening. I'll tell you, Chris Stanley, not involved, but I bet if he saw a cracked window to a store, he'd run in there and start grabbing shit.
Oh, I know he would.
He wouldn't do the work.
He'd be like
but
that
once-
chick who grabbed the cheesecake.
Yeah.
Honestly, I understand that looting isn't funny, but there was a clip of a girl walking out of a cheesecake factory with a perfectly balanced cheesecake. No lid to it or anything. She was just walking slowly, not running, just walking away. And I was like, is she going to bring that to protest buddies? Or is she like, I'm going home. I've done enough. I'm going to go enjoy my protest cheesecake.
I don't blame
maybe
her.
watched that clip 50 times.
Let me tell you something. Cheesecake is good. And I don't need strawberries and that weird syrup on top of it. I don't need caramel on it. You know what I mean? Like, just really good cheesecake is fantastic.
That's your
One
protest
slice, though.
cheesecake.
You can't have 2 slices of cheesecake. It's too heavy.
No, it's a mistake.
I couldn't believe that. I was thinking to myself, Vito ate an entire deep dish pizza. I don't think I've had more than 1 slice of deep dish pizza at any point in my life. And when
No,
it
I
gets
know I
cold, you can't even get into it when it gets cold.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't be stopped.
You're all finished with it now, right?
I'm all finished with it now, and like, honestly, just pizza. Like, it can be any kind of pizza. I had this thing called a pizza skin one time. That was a deep dish pizza, and instead of bread, it was mashed potatoes, and I ate that whole thing too. I don't even care if it tastes good. I'm just not going to stop because the taste is so familiar.
It's a comfort for you.
Where did you have this fucking freakazoid goddamn food?
I ordered it from that place Pizza Uno.
Oh God!
Like years ago, I saw somebody told me that they had this thing on the menu called a pizza skin, and I just couldn't not. And like you could guess which phase of my life this was in. It wasn't in the last year.
So you do a once a week cheat?
Yeah, once a week. I like to eat. Like I like to go nuts. We did sausage and peppers this weekend.
Oh, that's nice. But you don't put them on a roll?
No, we did. We put them on the roll. We went to a bakery by me and got like good bread. And my mom cooked the sausage and peppers herself.
You know what? When I grill, I love to do sausage and peppers because it smells so fucking good, right? And people come over and they're like, "What are you grilling? It smells amazing." Just onions and peppers on a grill is one of the best smells ever. You know, we were teasing Bobby Kelly. Well, when I say we, me, saying that it was white trash, his above ground pool that he got for his son for the summer.
Mm-hmm.
There was a video on thing. It looks fantastic. It really looks like a fun summer. I'm at the point where I'm thinking about going. I honestly.
Yeah.
You know, Bobby's big into come on over, Dad, and we'll grill. You know, we're going to grill, and I'll be able to get everybody into the pool. You know, then we'll smoke some sticks. I'll yell at Voss. You know, we'll have a great time. And I normally dodge that stuff. I don't like to be social with other men. It's disgusting. I always say this. If we're not going to do something gay, why are we here? What are we doing? Sitting together. That's why like Chris Stanley won't hang out with women. Because he just wants to F them in their peas.
I mean, it feels good.
One thing of seeing these young people that care about the future has made me hate Chris Stanley even more than I did before.
Why'd you hate him?
He's an old soul. I mean, when you're looking at it like that way.
First of all, that Uno place, what's the name of it, Vito?
Pizza Uno.
Anyone who eats there, I judge. I judge them. The way if I saw someone pull into a Burger King, I would judge them.
Judge me, because I went balls deep in that pizza skin. You know what? I don't even have any regrets about it. I'm happy I did it.
I don't think you should have.
I shouldn't have, but I'm not mad I did. Like, I know it was bad. I know it was a bad thing I did, but I'm happy I had the experience.
Oh, really? Why don't you go to fucking Chuck E. Cheese next, eat their pizza, and dive into a ball pit? Because you've done basically the same thing.
Do you mean Pasquale's?
It isn't called Pasquale's, is it? Is that the name?
Yeah, Pasquale's beer, Pasquale's pizza and wine, or wings and pizza or something?
Wings.
I'm going to go to their Yelp page here and said I'd rather wipe my ass with their pizza than eat it. Then I'll use the same thing I use all the time, like that. Chris Stanley at brooklyn.com.
Shit.
Chris, make sure you bring us a bread bros tomorrow, okay? Because the last one, you lost your complete reputation. You were on top of the world.
I know it was very controversial. A lot of people thought it was burnt, but I will come through with a fucking grade A bread bros.
What, white bread?
Oh, shut
Nice
up.
one. Chris, don't talk to him that way. That's mean.
He's attacking me, Ron. I need to defend myself.
Sometimes you could defend yourself the way Martin Luther King defended himself, by just taking it.
Oh, man. I didn't even think of that.
Did you see Mayor de Blasio's daughter was arrested
I did,
for bomb
yeah,
throwing?
arrested.
She was bomb throwing.
No, that was not her.
Oh, okay. I got confused.
Imagine. She was one of the
Yeah.
Molotov cocktail girls.
Chris Stanley, who's the executive producer of this show?
That would be me. That's myself,
And
yeah.
what's your logic of having the show go 2 hours without a break? How's that work?
I mean, it's not always the best, but we're not in danger yet. We should break soon. But we're safe.
Could you do this any duller? Could you do this? You're like Brian Williams. Here's what I said about Brian Williams every time I watched him. This fucker, for every sentence that he should use, he uses 7.
Yes.
And you get
100%.
no information from him.
Chris, we need you to be less Brian Williams and more CNN Center Showdown. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Bring the excitement.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to do my impression of everybody on those news shows that is running the show. No matter who, whether it's Cumio or whatever. Cumio. Whether it's Brother Joe, whether it's Anthony, no matter who it is. All right. Here, so I'm going to be the guy, quarterbacking it, and all you guys are going to be the people that I go to. Ready?
Okay.
We've got Gail Bennington with us. Gail, of course, is bringing herself out of Brooklyn. She's the mother of young Juju. Gail, before I get to you and talk to you about what's going on this weekend, I just want to check in with Vito Calise. Vito lives in the Upper West Side. Vito, do we have you?
Yes, I'm here, Ron.
I want to talk to you extensively what it's like to be a young man to see that happen. But before I do that, let's go to Earl Douglas. Earl, are you there? The only black person that we have on the show. And obviously, I want to talk to you about the black experience.
Yes, I am, Ron.
Listen to me talk to Chris Stanley, a young baker and racist pedophile. They don't do shit. They just pass it around.
No, that's constant.
How about this? You have one guest, then you talk to him. Is that so fucking hard to understand? One guest, talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Stanley, I've been busting your balls pretty good today, and I wanted you to throw it to break, but the fact that you're not black, just to prove that I am progressing on a daily basis, I'm going to have our own Earl Douglas throw it to break.
Bennington will be right back.
Faction Talk 3, it's the Bennington Show! Bennington Show.
Bennington Show. On a Monday after the fires. Just what we were saying, like maybe people were finally talking. I see here that Charlemagne the God calls out Rush Limbaugh, and I guess they talked with each other, but and that's kind of surprising to me. But Earl tells us he has a spy report. Spy report.
Yes, New York City will impose a curfew, 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew.
Well, that's not bad. You know what I mean? At least we get to stay out later than the other cities.
Yeah.
Most of them have to be in when the street lights are on.
I know. I was gonna be outraged until I heard 11 p.m. I was like, I guess it could be worse. How dare he stop these protests? Well, all right, fine. 11 p.m.
Well,
I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah, that's not a bad one.
I get sleepy around then anyway.
Yeah. When I was in elementary school, it was always, when those street lights come on, you better be in this house. And I always thought that was the funniest thing ever. Earl, you going to listen to him, or are you going to stay out as late as you want to?
I don't think it's going to last very long, so I'm going to play it by ear. I'm probably going to break it.
Cool.
Let's jump into Earl's Movie Club. And the name of this movie was what, Earl?
The Last Black Man in San Francisco.
Directed by?
Joe Talbot.
Tell us why you picked this movie for a movie club.
I saw a movie last summer, and it just totally blew me away. It was this very odd, unique story, beautiful story, and a very relatable story about family and about belonging. And I just loved it a lot.
Totally freaked out by the opening scene when those people were in those hazmat suits. I'm like, what the hell? You know what I mean? Talk about nailing the zeitgeist.
I know. And when
Gail,
he says that they don't have, I think it was like, how come they have masks and you don't? And I was like, this is really weird.
What did you think of the movie, The Last Black Man in San Francisco?
Yeah, I mean, I think it certainly was pretty. I think it's an interesting story. I feel like maybe the heightened surreal kind of nature of the way the story was being told was interesting and different. However, I did find it to be a little distancing because you're kind of dealing with this like kind of otherworldly characters, and they speak in very different ways, and the way that it's shot and cut, I thought it stops you a little, it cuts it a little short from really delving into the emotion of it because everything kind of felt unreal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's definitely a dreamy thing to it. That's why I was like, this is Spike. You know what I mean? This was reminded me so much of, was it School Days, the name of that one, where it was the same kind of weird, dreamy feel? Chris Stanley, what you think of the movie?
I thought that was like all Spike and Wes Anderson weirdly mixed together in one movie because there were things that like almost directly reminded me of Rushmore, especially the scene where they finally get the play up. and everybody was like whispering, and all the characters that you've met leading up to it, and visually the way that their little theater was set up, and I was like, this really looks like Rushmore. It's really weird.
But by the way, was that play great or what? Like normally those kind of plays, the avant-garde type thing, I'm like, oh, what are you, self-indulgent bastard? But I'm like, he's nailing this movie, and he's nailing those characters. But, you know, when Earl brought this up, I'm like, oh, now because this is, you know, these are already heavy times. And I really was like, what do you do when people, you know, don't have enough money to have a place to live when they used to have home? I mean, the whole thing is just so depressing and heavy. Chris Stanley, what did you think of the movie?
I enjoyed it, but throughout the film, I just felt sad. And as the film ended, I just felt really sad because there's like one pretty much sad thing happening after another. And especially when one of the main characters, Jimmy, gives the note to his friend Montgomery, I was just I just felt terrible. And but I thought it was a good film. It just left me very sad.
Do you feel like you felt sad because how much baked goods you've been eating over this quarantine, and you know,
could just be your blood sugar levels.
Yeah, it starts to shoot up and down. But that point that you go, I'm totally full. This feels good. Into depression.
Exactly.
Today was the day I was hoping to start. Vito, where were you on The Last Black Man in San Francisco?
So it was obviously everybody was like distracted this weekend, so it was like harder to get into than it might be usually.
I agree.
But I thought the guy who played Mont, there was something so heartbreaking about him. Like there was some, like, I don't know what it was, but the way he played that character and even his facial expressions, like the whole movie, I just felt so sad every time he was on screen. And I mean, let's not beat around the bush. That house was amazing.
I was waiting for this.
The stained glass window they had was beautiful. The witch hat, the beautiful architecture, and we even got a little peek into how the house was made through that scooter guide. It was just such a house to see. I get why they wanted it so badly. Don't know if I agreed with his painting, the color he wanted to paint over them, but I did love the house.
And what did they say the house was going for? $4 million?
Yeah, he said $4 to $5 million.
I'll fucking take it. That seemed cheap to me.
Yeah,
for that house.
Honestly, I was laughing when I knew nothing about the movie going into it. So when I saw it was centered around this old home, I was like, I can't wait for Vito to bring this up. And then I felt like the whole thing, because it was like I kept paying attention to it, because honestly, that might be like the house of my dreams. It's just, it was so unbelievable.
Well, you know what it was like? You know, when that, what's that site that we passed around? Is it called This Old House or Old Houses?
Cheap Old Houses.
Cheap Old Houses.
Cheap Old Houses. Here's the thing. The thing about them, you're like, I'll fucking take this now. And then you find out it's in Iowa or something. You're like, how am I going to live there? Right. But this is that house in San Francisco. And that's why it costs $4 million and not $89,000.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that house was completely unreal. Like those the witch hat. I mean, come on. That was like the coolest ever.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And, you know, to go back to your point, if like Spike Lee and Wes Anderson are the people that, you know, you're basing your stuff on, that's a pretty great place to fucking start. That's a pretty cool combination. So I'm going to agree also with Vito and Gail that if I had probably saw it any time but this weekend, I probably would have been more enthusiastic about it. But I was pretty depressed already.
At first I was thinking, I wonder if I would have enjoyed this more if I saw it in a theater. But then I was like, maybe what's going on right now is that this is a very slow moving, like, you know, kind of quiet movie, and I've just been hyper stimulated with just some of the most like insane news for the past 3 days, and it felt like such a bizarre gear shift for my brain that I was like, I feel like it's difficult to judge watching something creative right now.
And you know, I really I mean, one of the worst times about these times is when you let your mind get too far ahead. Like, what's going to happen to our economy? What's going to happen to the people that are missing their mortgage payments? What's going to happen to the, you know what I mean? That's the stuff that becomes so overwhelming that you're like, I got to eat this elephant one spoonful at a time. But that set all those things. And I'm like, is this the new normal? You know what I mean? That you're going back looking at your old house that you lost. You know, it was heartbreaking. And on that account, Earl, you were very cruel to recommend this movie this weekend. And I knew that on Friday. And you said it was somehow uplifting.
No.
Well, it does celebrate their friendship. The friendship between Jimmy and Mont, it's a great friendship.
Yeah, there's no doubt. But they're both in a world of shit. You know what I mean? Like, they're both in hard times and they ain't climbing out. By the way, do you remember the scene in the bus? There were two people in the back of the bus. And I think one of them looked to me like she was the sexy vampire girl from the vampire movies. I never can remember her name.
Oh, you know who was sitting in the back of the bus was I think her name is Thora Birch. Is that her name?
No, she was sitting up closer. This was in the back seat of the bus. I thought was sexy vampire girl.
I didn't notice.
Kate Beckinsale?
What's that?
Kate Beckinsale? Sexy vampire?
No, not that one. The one from the vampire movies where there were teenage vampires.
Kristen Stewart.
Thank you. God, you are so old, Chris, that you bring up Kate
I know. What an
Beckinsale.
elderly answer.
She's a sexy vampire.
He said.
Yeah, for your age group, you know? Why don't you just bring up Ursula Andress? You know what I mean? If that's where we're going. You mean Sophia Loren? Well, hello, Beckinsale. Looking good, Beckinsale.
Chris.
You make this old cock-a-mine move.
What?
The last fucking sexy person, the last person who aroused him was Kate Beckinsale. That's how old Chris Stanley is.
So sexy.
By the way, if you noticed, Earl, your birthday's still going on. We're being mean to Chris instead of you. So
I'm loving this.
Really birthday week. Yeah, it's really fun. It's really fun. It's helpful to have a privileged white guy like him in our midst. So, I'm going to give you an A for, recommending us a weird, good movie to see. And then I'm going to also give you an F for your timing of putting us all through this weekend. When we were already sad and concerned about our country. So, Earl, you get an incomplete at the end of the day, I believe.
I get bitter and sweet.
But the fact that you said that it was uplifting and I couldn't find it, and then you said he has a friend to be a bum with.
There was nothing uplifting about this film. It was all pretty down.
They had to share a skateboard.
Yeah, that they actually broke at one point. I mean, and then going back, and the old lady was out of the house, and she was sad.
Yeah.
Oh.
I thought the most heartbreaking scene was when he runs into his mother on the bus.
Oh, God, that was so sad. Why would you even bring it up?
So
It made me so
fucking
sad.
But that's the scene where I thought I saw Kristen Stewart sitting in the back of the bus, or Kirsten Stewart, or Al Stewart. You're the cat.
Kate Beckinsale.
Dude, you really... Who else you like? Victoria Principal? Where are you going with all these?
Big fan.
Yeah, me too. I'm saying that. A lot of complaints about that looter in the Upper East Side, feeling like he busted up a car that actually, probably the guy who owns this car probably only has 7 or 8 of them. It's really sad. There's a certain famous comedian that bought a garage for his cars on the Upper East Side, or Upper West Side. that when I saw the price tag on it, it's more than most people's homes. You know what I mean?
God.
Not even most people's homes in America. Most people's homes in New York, where they start about 2.1 million. Well, hello, Kate Beckinsale. God, you're old, Chris. You're so fucking
You really
old.
are.
I'm getting up
Well,
there,
that,
man.
yeah. That, and when the gangbanger kid died, that was so sad. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Earl.
And his
Earl,
like face
please.
when he hears the news.
That choked me up.
Why did you want to
Earl,
make us
you
so sad?
You can't put us through that, buddy.
Okay, I on that level, I'm sorry, and my next pick will be also be a lot more happy and cheerful.
Yeah, but who knows? Maybe that'll be, good times. All right. Did you send this to Gail too?
Yes,
Yeah.
I did.
Gail, look, Chris found the picture. The girl sitting next to the white guy with the Rasta hair.
Oh yeah, she does really look like her.
I don't think she just looks like her. I think that's her.
Can't be.
By the way, do you know who's produced that film? Was Brad Pitt.
Really?
Yeah, I saw his name at the end of it. Through my tears, I saw Brad Pitt's name. By the way, your aunt has a ridiculous crush on that Christian Stewart or Kirsten Stewart, whatever her name is.
How can you not?
Now I'm looking at her. I'm not sure it's her or not, but I know one thing: that fucking weird white Rasta dude never should be with that chick. That's cheating. I hate the way women have to settle. Every time I see a hot chick, she's with a disgusting guy.
Always. It always happens that way.
And I'm actually going to bring up friends of ours. I'll just say it that way.
Okay.
Why would anybody, you know what I mean, be with Rich Voss, let alone that woman? That's wrong. There's a great video of J.R. Smith beating up a guy who vandalized his truck. And the funny thing about this whole thing is, J.R. Smith has so much money, he shouldn't give a shit. You know what I mean? Whether his window gets broken or not. And then also just to see, like, you never see him when he's on the court and you think there's a tall guy. But then you see him around normal people and he's towering over them.
Giant.
All right, for
Chris,
no
why did you
apparent
just
reason.
send a picture of Kate Beckinsale?
That's from the movie. That's from The Last Black Man in San Francisco.
It
No,
isn't.
it is not.
And this is you bringing nothing to the table except for distraction. You're a distractor, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I want a bread bros tomorrow.
We will have a bread bros tomorrow. Trust me.
Hey, could you
Oh,
do
of
it
course,
without
because
burning the bread?
It wasn't burnt. It was just dark. It was a dark fucking bowl of sourdough.
I'm confused that, I'm just surprised that you would take time during your decadent lobster to make some bread for yourself.
Where'd you get the lobster from?
This service in Brooklyn called Peerless. It sends they just do seafood. It's got some lobsters.
You and your chick are really enjoying this quarantine, huh?
I mean, we probably treat ourselves. I mean, why not? I mean, sure, the protests and the pandemic, yeah, I mean, those are reasons. But I mean, in a self-contained
But I guess that
world,
doesn't affect people like you at the top.
I know. You know what he says about other people? Let him eat shrimp. That's his go-to line.
That washboard is made of solid gold.
You know, whenever my family, when I was a kid, and my whole extended family, was doing anything that seemed like it was good, like a picnic or out on a boat, we would always say, somebody would say, I wonder what the poor people were doing. And then we would all laugh as if our lives were good. And I'm like, when I even think back about this, we weren't doing one thing that rich people would have been doing. You know what I mean?
That's so funny.
We would say that when we were camping, as if we had somehow moved into the elite.
Oh, quite posh.
Any other big weekend stories that we need to get to, because we went out of our way to fix every problem with race and gender that this country has, and we managed to do it through one radio show. I'm very proud of us.
Yeah, I'm surprised, but we did. We fixed it.
Earl, I want to bring something up to you, and you are younger than me, but see if I'm making any sense here. I don't remember being a kid and hearing black people referred to each other with the N-bomb the whole time, the way these kids do. Am I wrong about that?
Not as not as frequently. Not as a, like, in some cases it's like noun, verb, adverb, pronoun, but
right.
Before, I mean, it was a very specific context.
Also, in the same way with white people, redneck was a real insult. No one referred to themselves as a redneck. You would say, I have a cousin who's a redneck. Like, that was something to judge somebody by, not accept.
See, for me, I always heard white trash was always bad.
Oh, yeah. It's fucking awful. There was this little thing where I lived. There was this little tracts of houses in between two neighborhoods. Didn't even have a neighborhood. And if you lived there, that was always called Bedbug Row. Bedbug Row, right? Mm-hmm. Now, this is the funniest thing. Not too long ago, I was talking to my mom, and she goes, yeah, they used to live down on Bedbug Row. And I went, wait, I thought that my generation invented that. You know what I mean? Here's my mom, who's going to be 90 in August. So she's going back probably 75 years to say that these houses, even then, were called Bedbug Row. They must have been brand new then.
That's the hardest thing about a nickname. You know what I mean? It's so hard to shake.
And I don't even know if they had bed bugs. Chris, you're telling us we have to break one more time.
Yeah, one more time.
The reason we have to break so quickly is because you let us go so long, that you're so filled with lobster and fine baked breads that you forget your job. And that's why you're never going to end up with a Kate Beckinsale. She would spit on you.
She would. She'd make me feel like an asshole.
I'll tell you this, all kidding aside, that's a phenomenally attractive woman. I mean, that face right there.
Yeah.
That's
for a woman her age, she looks great.
Any age. If you were a baby with that face, you ageist bastard. Ageism is the worst prejudice that there is, believe me, by far.
She's a smoke show for an elderly woman.
Elderly.
I think the term "smoke show" is gone, and I'm sad because I really do think that's a great term. I'd like to have that replace the N-bomb.
That'd be great.
It'll be weird, a weird adjustment period, but I think I'd like to hear it in more hip hop songs.
All right, let's take what I call the Chris break, and we'll be right back. You're listening to Bennington.
Faction Talk 103, it's the Bennington Show! Faction Talk 103, it's the Bennington Show!
Bennington is back and getting ready to wrap up the show in just a little bit, a very short time. Bennington SXM on Instagram to check out. Honestly, this looter who's completely out of control, and of course, comedians marching in protest across the country. Vito, are you gonna go back out there and accidentally join some more protests tonight?
I don't know. If I'm somewhere and a protest comes my way, I'll jump in. That's my new
If
thing.
it's convenient for you.
Yeah, I'm protest by convenience. If it comes to me, I'm all in and I'm with it. But to go seek one out, I'm just not there yet. And if it really is just because I am scared of Corona. Like as embarrassed as I am to say that, I don't want to go to a big crowd while I live with my mom. But if it comes to me, I'm not gonna just stand there and go, "Have fun, guys."
Yeah, I think I do think that really did change the dynamic of the protests that you normally see. Certainly, at least in this city, where I thought it was predominantly young people. I thought you saw less people of a certain age, and you saw less families out there.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool thing to see, and it was more. A lot of it was more peaceful than you saw on the news.
Yeah, well, I mean, like we were saying before, you're always going to get into a circumstance where, the sexiest stories, the violent moments, those are going to be the things that they focus on.
Yeah.
For example, Chris might do a lot of good in the world, but I'm only going to focus on the fact that he was eating lobster this weekend.
I was also actually last night I was eating scallops, so I don't know why I should be sharing all this, but I was also enjoying scallops. I mean, is that bad to be eating this much?
Yeah, I don't even know why you would even bother to. I don't even know why you would bother. You've only made it worse. You've added scallops to the mix, and I honestly somehow that makes you feel more elite.
I mean, I never wanted to be an elite individual. I don't think I am. I think I just ordered some seafood, and it's gotten out. People are now talking about it, and now I look like an asshole.
Yeah, but that's because, you brought this on yourself. This is something you shared. And while you did share the lobster in private with me, I felt that the world should know. You know what I mean? That's my duty.
Yeah, I don't think
to call out other white people.
There's no reason to call me out. I mean, it was a weird weekend, but there's no reason to call me out. I wasn't hurting anyone.
Vito, did you get our text that we were sending you?
Yes, we have Ron on now.
Okay, good.
So what exactly happened there, Gail? Do you know?
I don't know what happened. I came back, and then when you didn't respond, I just started talking to Vito because I realized that you weren't there.
Yeah, I heard the music, and then from that point on, I started talking, and I'm like, Vito, I'm not hearing anything. Oh, am I even on? If you can hear me, because we had the problem before the show today.
Right.
I'm trying to reboot and see if this works. All right, I'm going to go over to my mic now.
Can't wait to tell.
Hey, does this work?
Oh, yep, you got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Can't you wait
while you were away, we found out that along with the lobster, there was also scallops this weekend. So, you know what I mean? I don't even know why he would bother sharing that with us.
It's horrific.
It's really gross.
Isn't insulting.
And yet I still want to know how they were prepared.
Yeah. Yeah, I like my lobsters in the pan a little extra. You know what I mean? I don't want to get a soggy scallop. That's what I meant. Scallop, not lobster.
Oh, crisp outside? That's the best.
Yeah.
Gooey inside.
They were very gooey. I'll assure you that.
Oh, that's not good. You're a gooey eater for some reason. So that's weird. I got bumped off literally at the last possible second.
Yeah, that's really weird. Yeah, I never heard you come back or anything. I brought us back from the break. So we must have just both in our mind were bringing us back, but you didn't realize that yours wasn't going on the air.
Yeah. Well, no, I wasn't bringing us back, but when I heard it go dead, I'm like, hey, guys, I can't really hear you. Can you hear me? Because we had that problem before the show today. You know, this whole home studio thing, it has its disadvantages. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a couple.
I am not an engineer. I have never liked the technical side of the business. I always like to have an engineer there to do it. And I don't live with an engineer. That's my big problem. Now,
Sure.
same way on a train. I want someone else to be the engineer on a train. I don't want it to be me.
Yeah. You don't want to have to jump in that circumstance.
Riding a train, I'll go again. It's the Bennington show on a Monday. We're back. Hopefully things will have settled down. I don't think so because I'm now seeing, Gail, that the suburbs are starting to have people show up there. You take the little town of Livingston, New Jersey, there's 200 people right now gathered in, I guess, what would ever be their version of Midtown or downtown.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird because, like, isn't it, don't you feel two ways about it? Like, you want things to calm down in the way that you don't want, violence, and you don't want things to be tense. And yet, there's also this thing, like, I feel proud that the conversation is continuing.
Right. It reminds me of childbirth where, like, yes, I want the child. I don't want all the pain. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. It's uncomfortable, but at the same time, it feels like the work that we all need to be doing.
What I've done, and I know some people get annoyed by this, but it's my way of helping always, and that's my poetry. I come up with a poem that is my deepest thoughts and emotions, and I share that with the world. And amazingly, this one came to me so fast that I feel like there's some kind of help from the universe. And, I don't ask people, to what their, God feelings are. But I don't think I could have written this poem so quick and so elegant without it. I don't know if you guys want, I'll do it for you right now.
Yeah, I would love to hear it.
It's just that I'm not comfortable with it. I'm not a public speaker. And
come
you know what I mean?
on.
I'm more of a writer than I am a speaker. My work gets done silently, you know what I mean, with tiny little cat steps. But if you really want, I'll read this poem.
I do.
The weird thing is I read my poems very well. But I've heard people sob sometimes when I start to do my poems. But I'm going to send this out to the people around the world because I know that we're all hurting. But I want to sometimes put this on pause as well. I haven't titled this yet, but I might want to just call it. Yeah, it is hard. I might want to just call it The Perfect Poem. I don't know. There's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop. Children, what's that sound? Everybody look, what's going down? There's battle lines being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Young people speak in their minds. getting so much resistance from behind. It's time we stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. What a field day for the heat. 1,000 people in the street, singing songs and carrying signs. Mostly say, hooray for our side. That line's stupid. I should change that.
Hooray.
It's time we stop. Hooray. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. You know what? Something dawned on me. This is a song. Oh, yeah. That's a
I mean, it sounded pretty familiar.
Probably why it came to me so quickly. You know what I mean? Without any real work. Somehow that was, deep in my subconscious. Damn it. God damn it.
It was only the hooray that tipped me off. I was like, that doesn't sound like Ron.
No, that has always been an embarrassing line for me. All right. It's going to be... Here's the problem with this week. We're doing the funeral on Thursday. So that might reheat things up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like the funeral
Always
might
does,
set
yeah.
it all off again.
Yeah.
And they're going to do one. Yeah. They're going to do one in Minneapolis, and then they're going to fly him down to Houston and do another one there. And the problem, of course, is transportation. But I saw the Reverend Al today, and he said Tyler Perry has stepped up so the family won't have to fly private. And I go, that's really nice. Also, I don't know whether you saw CNN last night when they had the family on, and the family was so crushed.
Yeah.
And then and it's George Floyd's family. But then the police chief of Minneapolis was talking to them through a reporter. Did you see that, Gail?
Yes, I did watch that.
And every time he directed the family, he would take his hat off and speak to them and, take responsibility for that cop. And it was, I thought, a very moving moment that CNN played a little ham-handed. But I saw that those people were trying to open some dialogue. Little do they know, we did cure racism in this country over this show today. I'd also like to say this. You're welcome. And also, sorry about me forgetting that there was a song called For What It's Worth. I honestly thought that was my poem.
Yeah. Or the greatest poem ever is what it should have been called.
Now that's a mistake, I think, to say that, since it's really just song lyrics. But I'd also want to say to the people who don't know that song, you're welcome. I'm sure that touched you very much. All right, we got to get ready and wrap this one up, kids. As most of these quarantine shows, you just want to make it through. We appreciate being with you, though, and we know this is a hard time for everybody, except for Chris Stanley. He's living the life of Riley right now. So that's it, Gail. We'll be back in here tomorrow and watching over the next 2 weeks to see if this all spikes the coronavirus. Stay safe. Stay cool. See you tomorrow.
There's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there.